Good mornings are very grey, miserable, rainy January. So I'm going to hopefully try and cheer us all up with my little mug as well as this discussion today. So I've always been interested as part of my personal and professional development in the benefits that come from pushing ourselves out of our comfort zone and challenging ourselves a bit. And from that interest, I grew my sort of side business Noodle. I get a great sense of pride seeing people trying new things, little challenges I set them, and see how they develop and grow when they try something they've maybe never thought of doing before that they could possibly achieve. So I've been now using this a bit more to develop people in their working life, and particularly leadership roles, to see how they can stretch their horizons and become more resilient. I think we can all agree in current COVID times that our resilience is being tested. So as part of this series of discussions, I'm going to be talking to people that I admire for the skills and techniques they use to develop people. Today I'm going to be talking to Matt Thompson. Matt is a singing teacher and vocal coach, who I discovered a few years ago when I was looking to do a series of my own personal challenges. What started as a one-off lesson has become a big part of my life now with singing. We're going to discuss how the processes he uses can be transferred into our everyday lives to challenge ourselves and become more resilient. So welcome, Matt Thompson.
Thank you.
How is it up with you? And I believe you're self-isolating?
Yeah, I'm London-based as well. I live in Camden, but I'm here in Shropshire, so my parents are my bubble, so I've been here for quite some time. So I'm out in the countryside. So firstly, I do apologise. The internet's not so great in the countryside as it is in the city. So I do apologise if we get any glitches, but I'm quite nice and cosy here in a little cottage out in the middle of a forest somewhere. So it's quite nice and cosy.
Oh, you're making me quite jealous, actually. I think we can all agree we're out of our comfort zones. I spoke about comfort zones earlier, and during this pandemic, I mean, mental health is really suffering. We're all having to deal with different levels of stress. And I wondered if you could give some examples of how singing can help bring both mental and physical health benefits.
Yeah, well, singing is brilliant because it's, well, for example, breathing. So breathing is one of the fundamental areas we start work on straight away. So breathing is really, really good. Breathing's used a lot in meditation, for example. It's endorphin releasing as well. So it gives you a sense of personal achievements as you hit little milestones. So singing, people always get surprised that it's quite hard work and it's quite technical. And once you understand all of those techniques, it gets much, much easier. So you reach milestones. One example could be trying to reach a high note. And if that high note is within reach of your vocal registration, but you're not quite getting there, breaking it down into bite-sized pieces. So really kind of chipping away and showing students just bit by bit how to change the technique in order to be able to reach those high notes, but that gives you a personal sense of achievement. So the NHS is also another great example, because what's happening is people are starting to be prescribed choirs for treatment. And again, that's because it releases endorphins. It was proven that hospital choirs, the patients were actually recovering quicker because they were feeling better within themselves, physically and mentally, because of the breathing for the physical and also for the mental. But it was really helping them, their recovery process. I know for me, if I ever get a little bit down, if I put some good music on, that lifts me right out of it. But vocal health and voice strengthening, looking after a certain part of your body, developing it over a period of time. So what singing offers is no different to, for example, what Joe Wicks offers. So it's a form of meditation. You get rid of everything that's going on in the outside world for a singing lesson for an hour or for a song for a few minutes. And doing it regularly becomes like a lifestyle choice. So very much like going to the gym. So, you know, with the gym, you're strengthening your body, you're maybe toning down, you may be trying to bulk up, whatever it is. It becomes a lifestyle choice. You have to work at it each week in order to maintain or to reach your goal, or to maintain the goal that you've already reached.
Yeah, no, very good. I agree. And I must admit, when you speak about choir, I'm missing the choir that you also lead. And that's obviously something that's had to go a little bit by the wayside in recent times, which is a shame. Here's to better times. Well, we spoke about how challenging the current situation is, and it's making us having to change the ways we work and approach things. What have you found has been your biggest challenge, and how have you worked around it?
Well, lockdown, everyone's daunted by, you know, as soon as it's been announced that we're about to go back into another lockdown, it's really depressing. It makes you feel down. But I found for me, so rather than being daunted by the lockdown, I managed to find time to work on my own voice. Even though I'm a singing teacher, we always continue to work and improve. It never stops. So I went back in, for example, studying other singers, studying singers that I had studied many, many years ago. And sometimes you forget a little bit of the technique, and it's nice to have a bit of a reminder. But I was setting myself little challenges to be able to achieve certain goals. So again, just as I was saying before about, trying to reach a high note, if you put everything in little kind of steps, if you work away, then you're developing your voice. So I took the time throughout lockdown to get back into really working seriously with my voice. It's all very easy as a singing teacher to concentrate on your students and actually to put yourself to one side. So that was quite enjoyable. But yeah, it's all coming down over that period first. So for a lockdown period of trying to better yourself, and again, it's something that you really, really enjoy. So something that I really, really enjoy. So that really helped with the monotony of lockdown. So I was being able to stay creative and to use the talent that I've got and to better it.
Yeah, I agree. I think we have to sort of see a little bit of a positive in the lockdown situation, where it gives you in a way an opportunity to maybe do things that you haven't had time to do before. And I suppose, it's hard to find positives, but I think those are good tips. I think the other thing that's quite difficult is motivation. It can be quite difficult to motivate yourself. And also, you then have to relate that and think, well, if I'm a leader or a manager, how do I motivate other people? So how does this translate with some of the techniques you use when you're working with your students?
Well, when you're managing people or you're raising a team of people as well, it's all about appreciating what they do and making them feel valued. So singing's very, very much like that. It's about passing on a feeling to a student. And when you're passing on a feeling to a student, again, it's increasing endorphins. So it's increasing your mental health. It's making you physically better as well. Communication as a teacher or as a leader, it's key. So when I'm communicating with the singer, when they're working on a song, no two students respond in the same way. So I need to find a very subjective way of trying to pass on a feeling where, for example, one person might understand exactly straight away with the terminology I'm using what it is that I'm talking about and what feeling I'm trying to get across to them. Whereas another student might need me to put things in a slightly different way that they can relate to. So it's really important as a leader, as a teacher, to find that right way to communicate with each student on an individual level. So a song or a singer can make someone feel really good and empowered. And as a good leader or as a good teacher, you need to empower the people that you're teaching or leading. If you empower someone, you're going to get much better results. So singing's often being used to empower people and increase their resilience. So over a period of time. So it's a really, really good tool.
I mean, that does bring us nicely onto the question of resilience. And this is really challenging, isn't it? Just now, people are struggling to stay positive. Can you give some examples of singing increasing resilience?
Yeah, well, singing, blues, for example. Blues has been around for many years. It was more structured in the early 1900s. But blues was a form of storytelling, of a way of communicating to other people in similar situations. It was a way of telling stories of hardship. If I come on to talk about a protest song and a song about which would help with resilience regarding other people in similar situations, it would be, for example, Strange Fruit, which was written or sung by Billie Holiday, not written by Billie Holiday, sung by Billie Holiday. It's a song of cultural reference. It's a song discussing the hardships of the lynching of black men, for example. So, that's a song of not backing down, of showing a resilience to the way that these people were treated. So people coming together to tell the story in difficult times. Some of this is happening right now during the pandemic. So you can now start to hear the songs coming out into the charts that are starting to reference what we're going through now in these very, very strange times.
And we've referenced how achieving things and stretching yourself can increase that resilience. I know from my singing lessons, you had some great examples of this. So how to hit a note you didn't think you could hit before, and using distraction techniques and things. Could you talk us through that a little bit more?
Yeah, so distraction techniques that I'm really interested in the psychology behind the voice, because it's a very scary thing to be singing in front of people and to really show an emotion. And you've got to learn how to do that. So, you know, when you look at, for example, Adele singing a song, you only have to look into her eyes to see that she's really in that moment. She's really in that moment. But distracting techniques, so I use some kind of psychological kind of techniques with students, and it's very simple, and it's very basic. So for example, if I know a student can reach a high note and they're not quite reaching that note, but I know it's within their vocal ability, we use the body to enable them to be able to do that. So one method I'll use is asking a student to sing the same difficult note and keep their arms forward like this. So they'll sing it and they won't reach the high note, but then I'll ask them to bring their arms up as they are going up towards the high note, so that their arms are parallel to the floor once they've reached the high note. Now, just the simple movement of lifting the arms up, distracting the brain, will free up the vocal registration. I found some of my best notes have happened when I've been doing something else. So for example, maybe doing some hoovering and singing a note. I also like to use another technique of getting students to throw a ball, to catch a ball when they're working through a difficult area of a song. So for example, if they are starting to get nervous, I'll get them to throw higher, so they're concentrating on two things. So I'm distracting them completely, which again frees up their vocal in order to be able to get them up towards higher notes. It stops them overthinking. Overthinking is a massive thing when it comes to singing, and obviously for many other areas of life, but overthinking is a massive distraction for students. So if I can stop them overthinking by distracting them in other ways, it really does work. It's a technique that really does free up vocal registration.
Yeah, it's encouraging to hear you say that. I thought you were just sort of like trying to have a laugh with me before when I was saying, something we've demonstrated there is about how important your body is when you're speaking, and body language and things. And I think we spoke about standing up and being grounded and so on. And that brings us on to something, you know, about this sort of strange world we're adapting to, and we're having endless video calls and meetings online. And can you give some tips on how to get the most of this sort of form of communication, whether you're speaking to a team or doing a presentation online? Yeah,
so communication's key. It's really important. We got to stimulate the mind. So it's really important to have a good rhythm in your voice, for example. And personality, show personality and enthusiasm. So you're trying to pass on a mood. So with singing, you're trying to pass on a mood, and you've got to display your voice in a certain way. It's the same with conferencing, with leadership meetings, with teaching. Show enthusiasm, put colour in your voice. It's if you're not conveying an interest in what it is that you're speaking about, you can't expect your audience to be interested in what you're speaking about. That's really important. Body language as well. So as with singing, we were talking about kind of, you know, Adele pitching her higher notes with her hand. That looks good. It also helps her pitch the notes because she's concentrating physically, but it looks really good because she's in the music. Her body's not kind of standing out from the music. So body language, as with singing, is very important and can make you feel very empowered. So sitting back from the screen a little bit to let your audience see a little bit more of you, rather than your head being really close to the camera. Let them see a little bit of the way that you're moving your arms, for example. I mean, don't move too much so that you get the big hand syndrome on the screen, but body language, moving, little inflections in the voice will really help as well. It give you more of a melody within your voice rather than just talking like this in a monotone voice. Yeah, I think we kind of neglect that a little bit with some of these sort of online scenarios, don't we? Just kind of like flunk yourself in front of the screen and off you go. So it's good tips. It's almost like setting the scene on stage as a performance, isn't it? Absolutely. Could you give an example of who you think is a good communicator? Good communicator. So I'll go back to the way that people present themselves. So if I go back to my school days, I remember physics, science lessons. My physics class was probably the most boring thing to me in the entire world. I had a teacher, I'm sure a lovely man, but just would say, and this is how the neutrons are, and man, it would literally just make you fall asleep. And then someone comes along who I suppose revolutionizes the way that these physics is passed on to people. So you've got Brian Cox, for example, interestingly enough, talking about music, who was the pianist from D-Ream. They had that #1 with Things Will Only Get Better. So Brian Cox came along and he was able to explain things in a much more simplistic way to start off with, and a very, very visual way as well. So just certain things that you might that I found difficult at school to understand, all of a sudden you've got this person coming in with a great personality, with a great inclinations within his tone, and a very, very, very relaxed and visual way of putting information across to the audience that my teacher at school made very boring, but he made very, very exciting. So Brian Cox, for sure, I'd definitely use as an example for that.
Yeah, here's to Brian Cox, and just hope your physics teacher isn't watching this. But
yeah, exactly.
We can't really Brian Cox, can we? As you know, when I came to you for a singing lesson, I had a dread of public speaking. I mean, it took me so long to kind of even get to your door, really. So let alone singing, and I wanted to challenge myself to overcome this. That's something you must see all the time, I assume. And what are your tips for helping students to overcome challenge?
Right. So firstly, change your mindset from how you've always perceived things to be in the past. So change your mindset. So, for example, reaching a high note in a song, it might seem like you need to power up, but because we watch other singers doing that. So when we see a vocalist go for that high note, we see the jaw drop, we see the hands kind of the hands clench, we see the way that they'll pull their arms down, and it'll look huge, and it will sound huge. But when we see that, what happens is we think they're using an awful lot of air. So think about those super long power notes that singers sing. You can only sing a super long note with very, very little air in order to be able to elongate that note. So when you're seeing someone sing a note with such power and strength, we perceive that they are maybe almost close to screaming and shouting towards it in order to get that high note. But actually, in reality, what happens is we use the smallest amount of air, a lot of squeeze with the diaphragm, but we try and relax as much as possible. And by changing our technique, by relaxing, by working less, so I like to use a less is more approach throughout all of my lessons, we're able to get a lot more from our voice. So by working less, we get much, much more from the voice. This naturally goes against our beliefs because we've seen one thing and then we're experiencing it in a very, very different way. So if it's something that you're always doing, if you're always making the same mistake over and over and over again and it's getting no better, then there comes a point where you need to stop and go, right, I need to make a change. And in order to reach my goals, I've got to incorporate that change. I've got to do things differently. And if I can find a different way of reaching my goal to how I think I should have, then that's my starting point. That's where I go. That's how I improve things from then on.
We were sort of talking about chipping away at things and sort of small challenges, and that's the best way to overcome these things. And that really resonates with some of the things I've been reading about how the more you introduce small challenges into your life, the more resilient you can become. We use words like coming out of your comfort zone, and I think sometimes that's a little bit scary for people. But in fact, you should probably use language like stretching yourself, like you would with yoga. The more you stretch, the easier things become. How do you work with a student to help them achieve those goals?
So I might suggest the song to a student, and it might be a song that they really like, or it could be a song they've never heard before, or it could be a song that they've always wanted to aspire to, but thought, I'm not going to touch that because the notes are way too difficult for me. And it's not always about the high notes. It can be about the technical kind of skills in order to make something sound more interesting, which can be quite hard. But what happens is when I introduce something that's outside of a student's comfort zone, they naturally automatically get the fear, and that's standard within my lessons. So what I do, it's important. I encourage them how to set achievable objectives. So we work together in objectives. I like to do a couple of objectives at a time. So for example, I might go, okay, well, the breathing's not very good. So if you improve your breathing, you're going to get a better quality of voice. You're going to be able to stretch the voice more. So we do some work. So it's a case of working between the song and between the objectives at the same time. So going backwards and forwards. So I might use scales, for example, to show them that they can reach a certain note, and then reintroduce the song and show them how they can put that technique into the song. So it's really, really important then to give them the work to go off in between each lesson so that they can go off and strengthen their voice and to work confidently by themselves with the vocal exercises that I've given them. And also not to be afraid. I always encourage my students, let the mistakes happen. Don't be afraid. If your voice cracks and breaks, it doesn't make you a bad person. It means that that's something that we'll do more work on, and we'll show you how to expand and to get through that. So by putting people into a different environment vocally, and then they're able to achieve that, it's such a rewarding result. And then it has a knock-on effect for things to follow from that point onwards. So it's all about being able to objectively give tasks for students to be able to get closer to their goals.
I think that relates to everyday life as well, doesn't it? And never to be afraid of making small mistakes, because I think it's those we learn from, isn't it, really? So that's been great. I mean, I can relate to that with you challenging me with a Sia song. And I think, whoa. But yeah, kind of got there. And you broke it down to something which is achievable, and that's it. Yeah, all power to you. I think this has been really insightful and demonstrates how singing can relate to so many of the areas of our lives and help us with resilience and communication. So what would be your top takeaway to leave people with?
So if you're trying to achieve something, then it's not working, it's always important to make a change. Make the change. Don't reinforce the same thing that you've been doing over and over again. So if you keep repeating the things over and over again, you'll only be reinforcing the bad technique. So the fear is to make the change, to do something different, and to enter uncharted territory. Don't be scared of entering uncharted territory. It's the only way we can expand, and it's the only way that we can get more knowledge and we can get more power. But it's all about changing a student's mindset and approach. So something that you've previously found hard over a period of time will become much more easy and enjoyable as well. That's also another thing that I work a lot, trying to make the learning experience extremely enjoyable. So this brings us back to how setting yourself challenges and achieving them can have really positive benefits. It's also important to remember that not to be fearful of these challenges and to break them down into small pieces. So do remember that. Break them down into small pieces and it'll be far less daunting over a period of time. So don't spend 6 hours in one go trying to reach a high note. Spend 15-20 minutes here, 15-20 minutes there, at chipping away and trying to improve your technique. So everything objectively in bite-sized pieces, but do face the fear, because if you face the fear and you come through the other side, then you fear that no more, and then you move on to your next challenge.
Here's to that. That's been great. Thanks, Matt. I think to end on that note, it's got me inspired to go away and have a little sing. So in the spirit of today, what song do you think you should leave us with?
Well, I think you should do your own version of I Can See Clearly Now the Rain Has Gone. It's a very, very, very positive song. And with that song as well, it's very, we're at this crucial point with COVID now where we're getting the vaccines and all being well, they're going to work. And that's going to be our bright sunny day. So I would say get yourself singing that. It's a very, very positive song and it's going to lift your spirits.
Yay, here's to that. Cheers.
Cheers.